Thanks, Mike. Do you know how hard it was? Do you know how hard it was not only to go back to work, but also to pare down just 4 storylines? I think I put 4 storylines in my storylines for today on CSNPhilly.com, but 4. Can you with everything that's gone on this offseason? I just had to come up with 4.
You're right, and I did one for our website with 5, and I was like, that's not enough. But I'm out of words to write. I'm burned out because of the weekend. But you're right, so many things, and one of the things that I didn't even really mention that you kind of started off with, let's jump right into, is the quarterback situation, because we all know they made the deal, and Bradford is most likely going to be the guy, but when is he going to be ready? And is it a open competition, kind of like Sanchez has insinuated?
I think Mark Sanchez wants it to be an open competition. I don't think that Chip Kelly gave up a quarterback in Nick Foles and a second-round pick to get Sam Bradford, thinking that he was doing that to create a nice competition. Obviously, if you give up a second-round pick in a trade, you're doing it for a reason. They spoke very highly of Sam Bradford. So whatever Mark Sanchez needs to motivate himself, then that's good for Mark. But obviously, if Sam Bradford can play and he's healthy, then he's the quarterback. The only thing is, Mike, that we know this is a unique offense. We know it's a very fast offense. We know it's a different offense than Sam has operated at the professional level, although he is reunited with Pat Shurmur. So the one thing Chip has had in his first 2 years coaching, whether it was Mike Vick or Nick Foles or even Sanchez, is that those guys all were able to get through the spring camps and get an idea of how to run this offense and what entails, and not just mental reps, but obviously physical reps. But I assume that Sam Bradford is really going to be 90% mental reps throughout spring camps. And so you wonder, when he's finally cleared sometime by training camp, you hope, can he just step right in there and move the offense the way it should be from day one?
Moshe, I saw you on the television side of things the other night also bring up an interesting point about Sanchez. And, he had his best numbers, his best completion percentage, which was almost 10 points up from where it had been historically. But people don't realize that he had that shoulder surgery, and could that have been something that was holding him back last year? Could we see a better Mark Sanchez if given the opportunity?
I have to think so, Mike, and I thought about this a lot at the end of last year. You don't get to be the number 5 overall pick in the draft as a quarterback if you can't at least make all the throws on the throw tree there, and there were times last year when Mark Sanchez just couldn't throw an out route, 20-yard out route. I mean, plain and simple. And then obviously anytime he tried to throw a deep ball outside of the first one that he threw in his first pass to Macklin against Houston, everything else was wobbly and not reaching. I mean, I remember the one to Riley Cooper in Seattle that was almost picked off twice by 2 different guys. And I just think to myself, one of 2 things. One, his shoulder was not 100% ready. Much like Matt Barkley's rookie year, he admitted going into year 2 that his shoulder wasn't right his rookie year because of his senior year injury in college. And I just wonder if that shoulder wasn't, not that it wasn't repaired correctly, but it just wasn't ready for all the workload that it got, or if there was maybe kind of a dead arm period for him because the Eagles do so many more reps in practice than every other team. So he was probably throwing the ball in practice much more than any other quarterback around the NFL, having missed the year before especially. So I have to think that arm strength should be better this year. Obviously, we'll see. But it just didn't seem right that a guy who was picked that high in the draft. I know Mark Sanchez has his flaws, but most of them were decision-making. I don't remember him with the Jets being a guy who couldn't get the ball down the field.
Is this something we're going to get to see in these OTAs? Are you going to get a chance to see if, in fact, Sanchez can air it out and has a much stronger arm?
Unfortunately, we're not going to be able to, when I say we, as media, we will not really be able to see a full camp practice until the last camp, which is the mandatory mini camp, not the OTA, and that's June 16th through 18th. So we're still about 3 weeks away from, I know on Thursday we have availability, but I think we only get to watch warm-ups, and that's the way it's going to be for all the open OTAs.
All right, Geoff Mosher, CSNPhilly.com. One of the big spots is in that secondary, and right now I see Malcolm Jenkins. Who's playing safety next to him, and who are some of the candidates?
Yeah, that's a great question. That's something that I look forward to talking to Chip about on Thursday. I'm sure he's going to, in his press conference, say that it doesn't really matter who's on first team because everybody's going to get a truckload of reps and everybody's going to rotate. And that's probably going to be the case. There were a lot of times in Chip's first training camp and first mini camp where we drew some conclusions based on who we saw. Actually, this even happened last year. Who we draw conclusions on who's kind of getting a leg up on things based on who's out there running with the first team. And then the next day, there's somebody else. And so you really are left for scratching your head as far as who's the guy. And so, they have a lot of – I honestly believe Chip. Chip did a nice job this year, Chip and Ed and the whole staff, of getting guys who can play both positions, both safety and corner, and let the chips fall. Let's see who's good at where. We know Earl Wolf will probably get a lot of looks at safety as long as he's helpful. Jalen Watkins is a guy who can play safety, who can play corner, has been cross-trained at both. Jerome Coupland's a guy that they signed last year at the Lions practice squad. He has that really long wingspan. Eric Rowe, they picked in the second round, played mostly safety. They're going to start him at corner. But I honestly think Chip is going to take all these guys that I mentioned, some others, and take it down to the wire. Take it down throughout training camp. See who's playing the best at what position before he finally comes to an answer. I think we won't really, much like with quarterbacks, we won't really know who's claiming that safety spot and that second corner spot probably until the third preseason game.
Geoff Mosher's with us here, CSNPhilly.com. Yeah, and obviously, what is, you got Wolf as a guy that they drafted a couple of years ago, and as you just said, we don't know if that's the guy that's going to win that job or not. But then, of course, Maxwell's the one corner. Rowe, do they look at Rowe to win that left side first? And if he struggles there, is he an option? I think that whole storyline is very interesting.
Yeah, I would think Eric Rowe would have to be lights out to win the starting cornerback job opposite Maxwell, assuming it's the left cornerback spot. I think the history of first-round picks, high first-round picks, but especially second-round picks who play corner, of just stepping in and playing well right away is not good. I mean, unless you're Darrelle Revis, there have been a lot more guys who have struggled than guys who have really stepped in and played lights out. So I think Eric Rowe would have to be really advanced. So I think that's why they have Walter Thurman, who can play the outside spot. And I think that the best way to ease Eric Rowe in, if you decide that he is a cornerback, the best way to ease him in would be to bring him in for nickel on the outside and then slide Walter Thurman inside to slot where he's actually more of where he's played his best in the NFL, or use Brandon Boykin there. Obviously, that's another subplot that we have no idea what's going to happen with Brandon Boykin. But I think really to ease Eric Rowe in, you don't want to start him off on the outside from day one, unless he shows you in camp and preseason that he's the real deal.
Yeah, and one of the things I was looking at, too, is what are some of the areas that are the thinnest? And I would say the safety spot, even the competition there, you're not thrilled with anybody, really. There's not a name that jumps out at you that you're excited to win that job. But also the offensive line. I mean, yeah, the starters might be okay, but is that another area that you're concerned about, the depth of the offensive line?
Sure. Now, I think what's interesting about the Eagles in those two areas is that you are concerned about depth as far as talent, but not necessarily in numbers or experience. I mean, like I mentioned, you have guys who can play, and maybe you have some potential. Maybe Jalen Watkins, who was a fourth-round pick last year, has really made some good strides in year two and can step into that safety spot. Earl Wolf can play when he's healthy. We've seen him play well, or at least formidably. So if Earl Wolf is healthy and playing, you're not scared. I think Jerome Coupland is a guy who's really interesting, just as far as his wingspan, his prototype. Was on the Lions really liked him. They had to make some personnel moves that kept him on the practice squad instead of the 53 man, and the Eagles took advantage and wound up signing him. So there's people out there, and I think it'll be real. I think there's some competition, and it's not like you got a bunch of guys who are all bums, I would say. And I say that on the offensive line too, even though. All right, assuming Alan Barbary takes Todd Herman's spot at right guard, and you're wondering about left guard if Evan Mathis isn't going to show up. Well, Dennis Kelly has been here for a while. He's played all right when he's given the chance. Matt Tobin's a guy that they've been high on. Andrew Gardner played, sporadically. He had up and down. It's not like you're throwing a guy in there who has never played the game at the level. They signed 4 rookie free agents. 2 of them were actually highly regarded, thought they were going to get drafted. So even though the depth isn't there as far as, all Pro Bowl talent or guys who you really feel comfortable with, it's not like they're going to guys who've never played the game either.
All right, Geoff Mosher's with us, CSNPhilly.com. What is I guess, Tebow's role? What are you watching for from Tebow, and is this the first step in him to try to make this team?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, every time he's out there, it's going to be an audition. I mean, I know people are, in love with his versatility, and they see that as a perfect marriage for what Chip wants to do. When we talk about the 2-point conversion now and the changes and how he can help out that, I still think the bottom line is when you're talking about having a number 3 quarterback, you have to be able to play quarterback and play quarterback well first and foremost. You got to be able to throw the ball. I mean, it was just 2 years ago, his first year, that he had to play his third quarterback when Matt Barkley got in the game. Guys get hurt. So you can't just keep Tim Tebow on the roster if you think he can still run like he used to. He's got to be able to throw the ball better, and obviously he's been out of the game for 2 years. I know he's been working with Tom House on it, but I don't think that Tim Tebow is going to make this team if he's still a great athlete. I think he has to be a better thrower of the football than he was the last time he was in a uniform with the Patriots in training camp 2 years ago if he really wants to make the team.
Geoff, obviously, he's an interesting guy to watch here, but as you mentioned, the quarterback situation with Sanchez and Bradford, and then Barkley, too. I mean, nobody's talking about him. Do you think it's a clear conclusion that he's gone?
No, I wouldn't say it's a clear conclusion. They don't really – what if Tim Tebow gets hurt? What if he breaks his leg on the third day of practice?
I guess the question is, do they like him enough to stay as a third quarterback, or are they so sour on him that they would look elsewhere?
Well, probably 3 weeks ago I would have told you that, yeah, but then they went and didn't draft a quarterback at all. Didn't even sign one yet, I don't think, outside of Tebow. So, and there were some interesting project-type quarterbacks in the draft that I thought would really be interesting for Chip, whether it was like a kid who played for him at Oregon who transferred to Southeast Louisiana, Brian Bennett, or Brandon Bridge, Cody Fajardo. And the fact that the Eagles didn't take any of these guys makes me think that, they're confident going into the season with either Matt Barkley or Tim Tebow as their third quarterback, unless they can make some kind of move between now and the start of the season.
All right, 2 quick questions for you. Number one, Evan Mathis, there? What's the story with him?
Not there. Doesn't have to be until they become mandatory, and so I'm sure he's going to exercise that right for as long as possible.
Kendrick.
Don't ask me what the end game is. I don't understand. I don't really know. It's hard to know what's going through Evan's mind.
What about Kendricks?
Kendricks, I believe, is there.
Okay, and last one for you, Geoff Mosher, CSM Philly. In your opinion, which starting job on this team is the most up in the air?
Which starting job is the most up in the air? Well, I mean, it would have to be that safety spot opposite Malcolm Jenkins.
That's what I figured, too.
I do think Walter Thurman can play that. Was signed to play that outside cornerback spot, unless somebody else stepped up like Eric Rowe. And I mean, they didn't know who they were going to draft at the time. I think Walter Thurman was there to man that position, but they did not. They took a big swing at Devin McCourty, and he decided to pass up more money, and stay in New England. And that kind of threw them without a plan B in free agency there, and they didn't really make a ton of moves other than E.J. Biggers. So that's why I would say right now the spot that is the most wide open that anybody can claim is that spot next to Malcolm.
Geoff Mosher, CSMPhilly.com with more on the Eagles OTAs. They open today through Thursday, and they will continue June 1st, the 2nd, June 4th, June 8th through the 11th, and then the mini camp June 16th through the 18th. So plenty of Eagles on the way. As always, Jeffrey, thank you so much.
Hey, no problem. Hey, let's talk next time about those scouting staff changes. Really some interesting ones. We can get into it a little more next time.
And I saw your story on that, too, and people, check that out as the Eagles did something pretty interesting that you're right, that they jumped into with the scouting on the West Coast. So we'll see how that all – because then now they can get more Pac-12 guys.
Yeah, of course, because, they love Pac-12 guys and West guys. So. But, no, I think there's going to be some more moves to come. There'll be some pretty interesting. So.
All right, man. Take care.
See ya.